Hey everyone, in this video I want to do a little recap of 2022 and share with you a handful of personal favourite images I was able to create, along with some of the backstories behind them, as well as the technical and creative approach for making them. Please let me know what you might want to see more of in 2023. I know for me personally, I've really enjoyed just documenting going out in the field and creating new images. It's highly rewarding doing that anyway, but then to film and document the whole process really just adds another layer onto the whole creative approach to photography. So that's something that I've enjoyed doing, and I've got a lot more of those already filmed and on the way. But if there's anything in particular you'd like me to cover from a teaching perspective, or maybe there's a certain scene or environment or even a country that you'd like to see me get out and explore and share on the channel, let me know. Definitely open to ideas. I also know that many of you probably can't get out into the field as much as you'd like, so I've put together a huge folder of raw files. If you want to download them and post-process until your heart is content, feel free. You can check that out via the link in the description. Okay, so looking back at 2022, this was definitely a very busy year for me because we finally had the borders reopen here in New Zealand, which meant I was finally able to welcome back all my workshop clients, people that had booked before the pandemic, waiting to come over and do a workshop here. So I was occupied every single month, either running a group workshop or running a group workshop with multiple private workshops, as well as going out into the field for myself, filming for this channel, creating new video tutorials to add to the extensive courses that I have on offer. I honestly feel like this year I was probably out in the field at least 300 days of the year. So with that, obviously has come many opportunities to add to my portfolio. And for that reason, I was really able to add a nice little variety of different images. It's hard to narrow down and say which one was a personal favorite because all of them in some way obviously mean something to me. But I've just selected a little handful here that we can go over and have a look at a few different scenes. All right, let's kick off with this one here. I titled this Cerulean, and it is obviously a river braid image, a glacial river flowing into a lake. Now, we've all seen our fair share of river braid images. On this particular afternoon, there was that something different in the sense that there was wind on the water, so that gave us that nice interesting texture, which you can see down the bottom right hand corner, all those ripples there. I thought that was quite interesting, but I really liked the highlights, the sun, the harsh light that I had on this particular day. It gave me all those highlights on the water and a really nice natural contrast of dark and light in the image, instead of just having a more flat mid-tone, which is what I have in a couple of the other abstracts that I was able to shoot of the braids on a different event this year. But this one here in particular is a favorite because of those highlights and that big range, always trying to guide the eye somewhere in my imagery. And in this composition here, I'm utilizing those top braids as they flow inwards as a way to guide the eye to that center part. And yeah, I just really like the colors. At the end of the day, the colors, that tonal variance through the frame, and then just the way the water's kind of flowing inwards into the scene. All right, something a little bit different now, not as vibrant, not as bright. This one's called Through the Darkness. What I love here is the layering and obviously the spectacular light and just the memory of this moment. I was hiking across 2 days with a friend and photographing various scenes, nothing really jumping out at me as being grand and spectacular. And then on the final day, instead of spending one last night up here in the mountains, we decided, hey, let's just head home. We'll go all the way back. It was a big 20-kilometer day of hiking, and it started to rain actually on us. And then as that rain cleared up, and this is right at the last light of day, the sun came through here and just really created this magical moment where I just happened to be at this right area to line up this composition. And it's just one of those ones for me, I guess, where you can be out trying to achieve certain things with your camera. You might have a specific goal in mind, a specific subject matter, but then nature can do something like this, and it kind of just reminds you that we have no control of what happens out there, and the best approach is to be spontaneous and open to new ideas. And that was this moment here. There is a YouTube video on the channel of this particular hike going up to this glacier. Getting in and photographing glaciers and ice caves in the NZ is definitely not easy, just due to the nature of the landscape and the location of the glaciers. And even the structure of the glaciers themselves, they don't often allow opportunities like this. So hiking up to this glacier here was a good half-day hike, just going uphill. And there was a few little mishaps on the way to getting here. Slightly went off course and started ascending a different mountain. And anyway, long story short, we finally made it to the glacier, and getting inside this cave was just very humbling. It's a powerful experience when you're inside the glacier underneath all that ice, and obviously it's a bit nerve-wracking as well, because at any moment, you know, something could come down. There's different shades of ice where you can kind of see the weaker ice and the stronger ice, but definitely the heart rate's up most of the time. So getting in and exploring this area was just like, you know, it's a bit like a kid in a candy store, really. I wanted to get this particular perspective, so I've walked into the cave right up into a section where the glacier was tapering in, so I had to get down on my hands and knees. But then from this position here, you know, it's always effective to lead the eye to light, like what we looked at on that last image. We always want to pull the eye towards the light, so I wanted to look back to the opening of the cave. So to do that, I had to walk around and climb on top of these ice pieces, which I'm on now. And these pieces here are huge. They're massive. It's bigger than the couch, you know. And man, they're slippery because these things are polished. So completely smoothed over and so slippery. Just unbelievable. But I was determined to get this perspective here, managed to make it work. It's a perspective 12 millimeters, and purposely brought up the highlights in the processing to have that stronger source of light back there. Otherwise, funny enough, outside you could just see a barren rock wall, a moraine wall, brown in the distance, and it was bright brown. It just didn't look good, so I've purposely blown that out just to have that framing. So for me, it's more the memory of the adventure getting up here, but also just the humbling experience of being surrounded by such a massive ice and being inside the glacier itself was just incredible. And then, yeah, finding this little composition was kind of the icing on the cake, where I just loved being able to get ultra close to the ice details and showcase all those little bubbles in there, all the lines and structures. And a spot like this is literally changing day by day, and I think literally a week later this whole cave system here is collapsed and it's not there anymore. So there could be something better there now, or maybe there's nothing there at all that's worth photographing, but it's always changing, and it's just great to be able to get out and do this stuff while the opportunity presents itself. Each year, one of the workshops that I run is out on the remote fjords in Fiordland, where we have to helicopter out to a boat, and then we spend several nights on the boat in the fjords, no internet, no phone service, completely connecting with nature, and essentially following the weather and using maps and doing complete exploration photography. Now, I've done a few trips out in these fjords now over the years. So we're using the boat, a large vessel where we have a chef on board and crew and 8 to 10 passengers. And then we have a smaller tender which we can use to get on shore. So a lot of the time I'm going on shorelines and beaches and exploring forest and cascades just like this. On this particular trip, it was midwinter, and we had a big snowstorm come through, and it dusted a lot of these low coastal peaks. So getting that snow on the mountains was just such a blessing, but also just following this stream in this valley here right on sunset. And at that time of year, the light stays soft and golden for so long. But it's the combination that does it for me. To be able to combine this temperate rainforest with ferns, my favourite ferns in the world, and then get that with snow-capped peaks, it's just the absolute, for me, the pinnacle. It's the ultimate combination. And then getting the river and stream in the background and that atmospheric mist. So I titled this one Eden, and to me, this is paradise. This is heaven on earth. And like I said, sharing in this place, you know, with like-minded people, disconnected from everything, just absorbing nature, just the sounds, the smells, the sights. It's really as good as it gets, and it's something that, you know, every time I've gone out here, I've made some really strong memories, and this is definitely one of my favourite parts of Fiordland, some of these little fjords and streams, which I'll leave unnamed, but yeah, for me, this is where my heart is. It's out here always, and definitely planning on spending more and more time in these areas when I can. From a technical approach, it's a focus stack here, 1/4 of a second, quite slow, handheld as always, and focus stacking just 2 exposures just to get that infinite depth of field, because I was quite close to the foreground plants here, and from memory I think this was sitting around f11 and then stacking that 1/4 of a second ISO 200. Firefall, yep, I definitely stole the name from the fall in Yosemite, which catches that light at that certain time of year, and for obvious reasons. Now, let me tell you about this place. This is a place where we have these coastal cliffs with 4 to 5 of these towering waterfalls, which just plunge off into the ocean. And this would have to be one of the most isolated parts in the whole South Island. I first flew over this area by accident in 2018, heading elsewhere with a friend, and we spotted this area and these falls, and ever since then I became obsessed with, I need to get back there and photograph that somehow. Well, it's taken 4 to 5 years to finally do it, and mainly because of the logistics. I had a few attempts trying to line up getting out here, so you need to fly out here essentially. I looked at using a jet ski or a boat, but where the reef is and the rocky shoreline, it's just not going to work from a photography perspective. You'd have to be way too far back from the waterfalls. So finally, I was able to fly out, and even the flight had taken a few attempts due to weather and everything like that, and light. And this finally came together right at the start of 2022. Had 2 good friends with me, a few guys who have done multiple workshops, 2 Kiwi fellas. And I presented them with the idea to get out here and told them of the place. And thankfully they were keen and always up for the adventure. So we made it out here, and the challenge is having that very short window in time to photograph it, waiting for the right swell and the waves to come through, and then waiting for the light as well, and just trying to be there and get it all together. So it definitely come together well on this occasion, but I've got to admit there's more to be done here. Like I said, there's multiple waterfalls in this area, and I know there's other ways to photograph them and create even different images to this one, vastly different. So hopefully in 2023 we can get out there. I'd love to try and document the making of this place and getting out to this very special, very unique area. Okay, a different image altogether now. I called this one Here, and it just represents just being there in a moment that is just so beautiful and calm and fleeting. To get these amazing light rays and beams in the forest, you'd think maybe that would be quite common here, because in Fiordland we get so much atmosphere and fog, but often that will sit in the valley but not enter into the forest itself. I've seen it enter in and do this maybe 3 or 4 times. This is the first time that I've actually been able to get the camera, get into the area and photograph it without it disappearing. I had a good 10, maybe 15 minutes of this magical, glorious light, and you know, this image itself is incredibly simple. It's just a balanced scene of those 2 main trees in the foreground there, in the front, left and right, balancing the frame. But it's just the finer details really, and the light is the winner in this case. There was definitely scenes where I got better light beams, but I just liked all the subtle details. So for example, I like in the top right hand corner that vine swooping down, and then when you look closer you see all the little leaves off the beech tree there. On the left hand side there's those 2 arms reaching out to the side. Look at the lower right, all the trunks with that moss that's being backlit and illuminated, and even on the main tree on the left of center, you can see the moss getting lit up there. Backlit mossy trees is, you know, it's as good as it gets really. So on this particular day, just being there and looking at these beams, it's kind of like the jackpot, you know, when it comes to landscape photography, to get these beams breaking through. It simplifies the scene. One of the hardest things of forest photography is the complexity of the forest, and creating a composition which is clean and allows the eye to take in certain elements without getting overwhelmed. And the fog has a way of simplifying and cleaning up the scene. So yeah, this one here, I think I like the simplicity of it, the beauty of the moment, and just the glory of the light. It was just very special to take in. It's a shame I couldn't film it, but sometimes some of the best stuff is better not being filmed, so I can be present there in the moment. This one here is called Guidance, and it is a canyon, one of thousands of canyons here in the South Island, waiting to be explored and photographed. And that's one of the goals of 2023, is to get out and do some more canyon photography, because it's an absolute goldmine in a very unique part of the South Island landscape. What I like here is contrast in the colours. We've got the cool tones and those warm tones, the cool blues and greens with those subtle warm hues, and then the contrast in the texture, those hard detailed rock textures that we have in the foreground and on the left, and then the softer water and that glowing light back there. It's just the uniqueness of the landscape here. And as always, just being able to draw the eye into the light. This is a focus stack, 2 exposures needed to get that depth of field, handheld at 0.4 seconds, which is kind of getting as slow as I can go handheld on the Mark IV. Hopefully when I get the Mark V, we'll be able to go even slower again. And yeah, just focus stacking there. The slow shutter because it's so dark, but also to get that nice water texture in the stream. And wearing waders to get in here and photograph this scene. And yeah, what more can I say about it? It's just such a beautiful place, and it's actually quite overwhelming. Inside these canyons, it's huge. You know, the walls here are towering above me, going up 50 feet or more. And there's so much to take in, and you could have a telephoto and photograph all the fine details, but in this case, I really just wanted to lead the eye through the scene and try and showcase the whole environment, particularly all those little details in the moss. And I love that reflected light just left of center on the rock there. So yeah, hopefully some more canyon photography to come later next year. The last image I want to finish up on, this was only created a week and a half ago now. And this is, again, another one of those moments that you could never plan or predict this type of moment in time. You just have to be there. You just have to be out in the field, and when you see it, you react to it. And I was photographing lupins for sunrise prior to this, which was a really fun and enjoyable shoot in itself. And then upon leaving that location, this scene here materialized for a literal 2 minutes, and then it was gone. Now, what was gone? It's all that layering in the foreground, the mist there. So whenever you know, when you have valleys and trees, it's when you get that mist in between each one where you get that layered effect there, and you get that sense of depth, all that separation. The light was just striking the peaks in the background, just beautiful light not long after sunrise. All that mist and separation. I love that tree on the lower left. I really was conscious of getting that guy in the frame. And then the bird is a black-fronted tern, which this time of year, all the chicks are coming out and the terns are just going crazy in this valley, going back and forward. So single exposure. I did have to focus stack though for the foreground, so technically 2 exposures, but yet the bird's legit, everything there. And this is a scene that was shot pretty tight, 250mm, just pulling everything together. But to me, this is really a personal favorite, not just from the year, but in general, because it's got everything that I love. I love the beech forest in Fiordland. I love atmosphere, light, mountains, you know, you name it, everything's in there. So this for me was, and then getting the bird in that spot too. I love always trying to incorporate birds into my imagery, and I just like what they kind of represent there, that solitude and that freedom. And yeah, anyway, so this one's called Splendour, and yeah, definitely a personal favorite. Thank you so much for letting me share some of these images with you. Don't forget to download these raw files if you want to do some post-processing. And again, your likes and your comments are always appreciated, as well as the tip feature, which is huge, and it's going to allow me to keep growing the channel and investing more time in documenting some of these adventures. So thank you for the support through the year, and I'll see you in the next video.